Hello and welcome to Wednesday's ITV7 Picks podcast, where me and Frankie will be going through all of the 7 races on Wednesday's ITV7 free-to-play game that sees 4 races from the second day of Glorious Goodwood, 2 from Perth over the jumps, and 1 from Redcar, with a £75,000 jackpot on offer for day 2 of Glorious Goodwood. Frankie, a bit for everyone on Wednesday, bit of jumps, bit of flat racing. We don't mind it, do we?
No, we don't mind the jumps at all. Yeah, it keeps it interesting, doesn't it? And as we mentioned on day 1, we love looking at these group races at Goodwood. But for the sake of the ITV7, it is quite good fun to try and find a winner of a handicap over at Perth on a Wednesday. So we'll see how we get on. Paddington, the highlight of the day for me, which we'll get onto, I'm sure. But yeah, another cracking day's racing.
Yeah, definitely set to be. All we need now is the weather really to stay away, don't we? Because I look
Mm.
at the forecast for Wednesdays and it looks a bit gloomy all around the country and even in Scotland as well. Just to get this out of the way before we start, like we mentioned in every podcast, if you would like to get involved in TWE's ITV7 free-to-play league today, you can then be in the league for the chance to win £100 first place cash prize, finishing top of the leaderboard at the end of Glorious Goodwood. So there's up to £400,000 across the week in jackpot prizes to be won. So if you want to get involved in the league, join using the code TWEITV7 to join our league. The T's and C's will all be in the description below if you do want to get involved. So make sure you check that out. Right then, we'll get stuck in. And the first race, Frankie, we're going to cover comes from Goodwood. It's the 150 Coral Handicap over 1 mile 4. At the top of the market, William Haggas, Tom Marquand, Amuletto, 7-2, Westerton 11-2, Struth 15-2, Fox Journey 15-2, and then you've got 8-1, bigger the rest. It all depends on how much rain does fall there with a lot of these horses, doesn't it? But a big fielded handicap to start us, and the first race on the ITV7 on Wednesday. Who's the winner?
Yeah, it's a good race to get cracking with. Not usually my style. I like to usually side with horses I know a little bit more about. I just feel more comfortable, with knowing a little bit more about the horses and what they've produced. But I'm going to take a swing at one here. I'm hoping for the Frankie factor on board French Invasion, who has only had 3 starts on the all-weather. So a lot of people would argue it's definitely hard to back, but it's a strong jockey booking. If you go and watch his second start when winning at Lingfield, there's definitely some talent there. He was beaten last time out, but I think the winner just nicked the race turning for home and probably was outdone for a little bit of pace, which won't be an issue with that long running at Goodwood. So I am taking a bit of a chance, but Frankie's on board. We'd love to see a Frankie Dettori winner at Goodwood. When he teams up with Charlie Johnson, he's done pretty well as well. He's been booked quite a lot recently. And as I said, there definitely was some talent on show when winning at Lingfield. So French Invasion to get us going.
Yeah, lovely stuff. We don't mind that, do we? Frankie on board. And Mark Johnston, before he passed it over to Charlie, has got a really good record in this race. So you'd be loving to hear that as well. And currently 9-1. I know it doesn't really matter about price in the ITV7, but I can see that horse getting backed with the Frankie factor being a fairly big thing. I've gone at the other end of the market and I've gone near the top. And I just think even though the rain's going to play a factor here, and we might see some quite big prices win throughout the day, which normally happens when the ground turns soft heavy. But what we have with Amuletto, for William Haggas at 7-2 at the top of the market is proven on soft ground, a cracking pedigree, and off a mark of 89, seeing first time in a handicap, this horse just might be completely better than a mark of 89. Like I mentioned, when only been seen 3 times this horse, and really underperformed on his debut run in October last year. But that must have been a blip because only 17 days later came out of Kempton, finished a much better 4th of 14 in a really hot novice stakes at Kempton, which was behind the likes of Mustabshir and Davideo, who's since come out and won. Seen on his first start as a 3-year-old at Chester's May meeting in absolutely torrential conditions when getting off the mark in fine style, stepping up in trip to 10.5 furlongs that day and went on to bolt up just by under just 4 lengths. Not seen since, but making his handicap debut here. The forecast at Goodwood is very similar to what it was like at Chester. And like I mentioned, a mark of 89 could really underestimate him. He's a full brother to Seer Class, and we just know how good that horse is. So if following the same footsteps, off a mark of 89 going up to 1 mile 4, Amuletto could be very, very tough to beat in the opener. Right then, a bit of jumps we're going to talk about now. We're going to go over to Perth for the second race on Wednesday's ITV7 free-to-play game. This is the conditional jockey's handicap hurdle over 2 mile 4. Frankie, who takes your eye on this?
I'm going to go with top weight Idyllico. Has been racing on the flat the last couple of starts. His last hurdle start, he did finish 10 of 12, but that was in a class 2. It was a much better race than this. If you go back a little bit further, put in 2 good hurdling performances round Perth, second once and won the other, off the same mark that he comes here today. He does have to carry top weight, but he has shown he can do it round Perth. He's had a little bit of racing on the flat to keep him fit, and I think he comes here with a good chance.
Yeah, course and distance winner, can't really go wrong when they're already proven at the track, especially at Perth. The one I went for, the one I thought took the eye and a little angle in, was Nastasia, the mare in the field. She returned after 8 months off in June at Hexham and finished a really good third over 2 miles off a mark of 81. Seen just once more since then at Market Raisin earlier on in July, over 2 mile, 4.5 furlongs. So stepped up to very similar to what she'll be running over on Wednesday. And again, she was solid again, taking the step up in trip in a stride and only going down by just around 3 lengths. I thought both of her efforts give her a leading chance in this race. She races off a mark of 81 again. And having run previously on softer ground and run not to a bad level, she does handle conditions. So I thought it was a very tricky race to sift through, but just trying to find a little angle with 1 or 2 horses, and that was the one I came down on. So the mare off a mark of 81, Nastasia for Rebecca Menzies, was the one I'll go with in the opening race on the ITV7 from Perth. Right, we're going to go back to Goodwood for the third race on the ITV7 game, and we're getting more into the good stuff here, aren't we, with the Group 3 Whispering Angel Oak Tree Stakes over 7 furlongs. A race that over the years has seen some really nice winners, and you see horses almost drop back slightly into from a Group 2 into a Group 3 here and try and pick up. But there's a big field here. We've got Fast Response, 11-2 at the top of the market. Jumbly, who flat to deceive really in her 2 runs to date this season, 11-2. Breeze, 13-2 for John Quinn. Dreamer Love, 8-1. Olivia Meralda, 17-2, and 9-1 bigger the rest. Frankie, some big prices in here. Obviously, I know we mentioned that prices don't really matter, but I think there could be some upsets across the day. Who are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, not necessarily dropping down in class, but Olivia Meralda has been very consistent at this sort of level. She was 7th in the 1000 early on in the year, and I know 11 lengths or so 7th, but the front 2 went miles clear, and we know how good the front 2 were, and the rest of the field is certainly not a bad field to be 7th in, or 5th of the rest. She beat Holguin at Epsom, who won the other day at Chester, quite a nice horse. And she was also 5th, but only 1.5 lengths 5th in the Jersey Stakes at Ascot. So, she hasn't obviously been in the frame. She hasn't been placing, but she's almost there, and she's been super consistent. Almost kind of like Hartem that we spoke about on day 1. You're going to get a run for your money. She can perform at this level. Whether or not there's going to be 1 or 2 in here that's too good potentially, but I think she'll at least go close. I definitely think she'll be in the top 3, and hopefully she can win, obviously.
Yeah, part and parcel of playing the ITV7 is obviously you want to have your run for your money, and even if you're not getting winners, if you're getting places, you're getting up the leaderboards, and I think that's what you need, horse. And I think, like you say, you're getting more of a solid chance there with Olivia Meralda than maybe others in the field. And I've gone for a similar sort of tactic with the horse I've gone for. I've gone for Matilda Picot for Kieran Cotter and Ronan Whelan, and I think she is so underestimated in this market. It's absolutely unbelievable. If this was a different trainer, no disrespect to Kieran Cotter, but if this was one of the bigger guns, this horse would not be the price of 9-1 that she is. She'd be much, much short because she's shown so much good form on soft ground and versatile trips as well. So as a juvenile, she showed plenty of form for the yard, and I reckon they thought, well, we've got a really nice horse here. And she really confirmed that at Newmarket on a final run last season when landing the listed Bosrasham Filly Stakes at Newmarket over 6 furlongs. That was on good to soft ground. Back as a 3-year-old this term, making a really pleasing return at Leopardstown, finishing a good second behind Never Ending Story for the Ballydoyle team. That was in the Group 3 1000 guineas trials over 7 furlongs. So it was a lovely first performance back, up to a mile for the first time, although probably not staying the distance completely in the 1000 guineas at Newmarket. She did manage to finish third behind Morgan Tahira. So those two pulled clear, though it was in soft conditions, and she was the one rattling home behind them. So I don't think she proper got the mile, but she showed a lot of good form there, I think. Last seen at Haydock, she dropped back to 6 furlongs. In the really competitive Group 2 Sandy Lane Stakes, obviously won by Little Big Bear. She ran quite a credible race, because if you watch, she went off from the front, tried to nick it there, and when we know there was a bit of a track bias on the day from Haydock that day, and she was more down the centre than where Little Big Bear came from. I think she's shown all season in soft conditions how solid, how gritty, how versatile a performer she is. So dropping back into a Group 3 against her own sex, back at 7 furlongs. This looks a distance for me that suits her the most. And I just think she can't be ruled out. I think she's got a lot going for her, especially if the rain keeps falling. So Matilda Bacot for Kieran Cotter to land the Oak Tree Stakes. Right, we're going to go over to Redcar for the only race Redcar have on the ITV7 game on Wednesday. And the race in question we're going to have a look at is a novice stakes over 6 furlongs. Frankie, who did you come down on? Because I found this very, very tricky. We don't know much about any of the horses at all, do we, in this field?
No, we don't. Out of what we spoke about on the first 2 days, this is probably the one where, yeah, there's not loads to go off. You'd want to know a little bit from somebody at the yard probably to find the winner of
Yeah,
this.
I agree, yeah.
Salamanca Lad at least has a lot of scope for improvement from the first start at York. York's a tricky track to handle anyway for lots of horses, but he ran a bit green and still managed to finish 4th. And once he almost kind of started to get himself together a little bit in the finish of the race, did finish the race quite nicely. So it's kind of one of those that you definitely know there's some improvement there, as there is with all these young horses, but maybe more improvement to come from this horse after a little bit of experience at York, and probably will be a little bit more professional this time out. So Salamanca Lad gets the nod.
Yeah, it's just all about trying to find that little bit of a nugget in there that you can try while you want to pick a horse in this race. Sweet Soul Music was the one I came down on. Just seen the once today, like your pick, finishing a really eye-catching 4th on heavy ground at Beverley only 9 days ago, over 5 furlongs that was. The step up to 6 will likely suit, I think, having shown form on tough ground conditions. So I just think from the way the Gelding ran last time, I think 6 furlongs will be right over street. I just think he's a less risky pick than most in the field. Like the ones on debut, yes, you might find one that's really, really good, but we just don't know that much about them until they run. So from seeing one run already, I thought this Gelding was a really big eye catcher last time out. And hopefully up to 6 furlongs can get the job done. At Redcar, right, the second and final race we're covering from Perth is the handicap hurdle over 3 miles. And Frankie, this doesn't get much easier, does it?
It doesn't, no. Almost forgot about this one. Petite Rhapsody, however you might say that, for Lucinda Russell. There's not many Perth cards you go through without Lucinda having a winner. This horse has almost exclusively raced at Perth. He certainly knows his way around. He must have raced there 20 odd times. He has managed to win here twice. Patrick Wedge was on board both of those times. They were over 2.5, but he has finished second 3 miles around Perth before. The thing I quite like is that since winning 3 starts ago under Patrick, he still performed quite well in some handicaps with other jockeys on board that don't have the claim. And now Patrick's back on board, taking off that valuable 5. So I still think he's in as good a form as when he won the race. And although his mark's gone up slightly, he's kind of been performing in line with that rise. And as I said, Patrick now takes that 5 off again and has been the jockey that's won on him both times at Perth. So trainer, jockey, course combination all coming together again, hopefully.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And yeah, that's all you need. When you've got a few little things going your way for your horse like that, definitely worth putting up, and especially Lucinda Russell around Perth, because she has plenty of winners there. The one I looked at, even though I think yours has got a really, really good chance, Galileo, hopefully runs like Galileo.
Not sure about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I just found a little angle in with this horse. Since leaving Shark Hanlon, and being with Lisa Harrison, Galileo has really started to find his form again. And there's been glimpses that he's been showing over the last 2 races that give him, I think, quite a good chance off a mark of 94. Because I think that could still underestimate him if he runs to his true level. 4th over course and distance 2 starts ago when running a really credible event. He was then last seen over the same course and distance, finishing a much better second behind quite a decent runner for Gordon Elliott that day. I think racing now in what looks a much easier event than what he ran in last time, only £2 higher. I thought he could be the one off that mark of 94 that was the one to beat. So Galileo, Felisa Harrison, and Thomas Dowson. Right, back over to Goodwood for the penultimate ITV7 race we're going to cover on day 2 of the meeting. And it's the Group 3 Molecombe Stakes over 5 furlongs. A race that sees some absolutely rapid juveniles. I'm not sure how quick they're going to be going in the mud on Wednesday, but it's always a cracking race to see just how good these youngsters are. And Killian's at the top of the market with Carl Burke, who's had an absolutely superb season today, 15-8. Royal Ascot winner Big Evs for Mick Appleby at 5-2. Chagron 8-1 for Clive Cox and 9-1 Bigger the Rest. Frankie, again, it's a tough one because we don't know all that much about all these horses. Only seen them a few times, but there's always one that comes out the pack that's very, very good. So who is that one for you this year?
There is, yeah. To be honest, I like the two at the top of the market, so nothing that interesting for me. And the thing that probably sways it is their running style. I think if Big Evs goes from the front again, I know he's drawn 8, but if he gets to the front and he is out in front, especially turning, on that kind of running we got at Goodwood, I think he could be a bit of a target for the favourite Killian, who was very impressive when being pulled out by Ryan and showed that nice turn of foot last time. So I think they'd be quite hard to split at the top, but I just feel like Big Evs, if running like he did from the front, could be a bit of a target for Ryan just to sit quietly, travel nicely, and then turn on the gas and go past him. So I'm going to stick with the favourite here, but I think the winner comes from the top 2. But I mean, you look like you're going to tell me different, James.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping I'm going to tell you different. Like I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, I just think there's going to be a few bigger prices that could win some races, and just all because of how much rain I think is going to fall ahead of Wednesday. So the one I've gone for in here is the Richard Hannon trained Bahia. Like I said, I just think there could be some big prices. The Richard Hannon's got a great record in this race as well, in the last 2 renewals, and obviously only putting one in here with Bahia. You'd like to think that he is the best juvenile best 2-year-old he's got at the moment. A well-bred son of Memas on both his starts today. One thing he doesn't lack is pace. Finishing a really good second on debut when chasing home a shock 150-1 winner. But then seen again last time out of the same course and distance at Newbury. And he'd improved massively from his debut and went on to score quite nicely to break his maiden tag. This race, I think it comes down to a question of who handles the ground the best. We don't know all that much about them on soft ground, but with Memas having a little bit of form on soft ground during his career, I'm hoping Bahia travels in the same style and way in soft ground that Memas did. And like I mentioned, Richard Hannon, winning the last 2 renewals of this race, he's got some really good juveniles this season. So to put Bahia in made you think that he's the best of the lot. So Bahir's the one I landed on, but I think it's a fascinating race because he's just about who handles the ground the best. And obviously these youngsters, it's still only their 2nd, 3rd day on the track for some of them. So it's going to be a new to a lot of them. But we'll see what happens. Right, the final ITV7 race on day 2 of Glorious Goodwood is the big one. The one that you talked about at the top of the show, Frankie, that with the Group 1 Sussex Stakes, and Paddington, he's 4-9 at the top of the market. What a superstar he has been for Connections this season. And because we're not thinking about price, surely we're thinking this horse can't get beat.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward to finish off, James, or I hope so anyway. He's been so good, and I said it's a straightforward selection. The horse is also incredibly straightforward for how good he is and how talented he is. He just does it so easily, doesn't he? And Ryan's probably the perfect partner for a horse like that because Ryan's so good at getting the best horses just to be in the right place and be allowed to run their race how they want. And I think he'll keep it pretty straightforward. And yeah, I'd be really surprised if Paddington is beat. It seems to be getting better and better and better, doesn't he? I don't even know if we've seen the ceiling yet, and he's put together multiple Group 1 victories. So, yeah, it's straightforward. I'll be cashing in my thousands on Paddington come Wednesday afternoon.
Surely Paddington's bulletproof here. Look, Inspiral, obviously a very, very nice horse, but hasn't always performed. Aldari, we probably haven't seen the best of Aldari yet, but I don't think he's up to the same standard at all as Paddington. Factor Cheval, we don't know much about. Obviously, a French races in France. And Shindit and Charin, we know can't beat Paddington on the best of their form. So Paddington, for me, what you've got, he's shown it in heavy soft ground. He's shown it in good ground. He's shown it over 7. He showed it over a mile. Showed it over 1 mile too. What more? What more do you want to see from him? And because we're not thinking about price at 1 to 2, it doesn't really matter. And I even think 1 to 2, with what the field looks like and the way we know how this horse can run, he could absolutely bolt up, couldn't he? Could absolutely bolt up. Yeah, he's like a winner last time out, beating Emily Upjohn, who's a very, very good horse, beating Chaldine like he wasn't even there at Royal Ascot, and obviously winning the Irish 2,000 guineas very easily as well. Yeah, he's bulletproof for me. I think it will hopefully be an easy one to finish. If we're all waiting on Paddington to win the ITV7,
be nice, wouldn't it?
you'd be thinking you're cashing in your ticket, won't you? So, yeah, Paddington to finish off then on the Wednesday's ITV7 free-to-play game. Frankie, that's 2 days done. 3 more to go. Obviously, Goodwood's the main feature, what we're looking at, but we are looking at different tracks, so we'll have to find out who is on Thursday's ITV7 game, where we're looking away from Goodwood. But thanks again for all your selections. If you do want to get involved in the completely free to enter ITV7 competition on Wednesday, use the code TWE ITV7 to join our league with a £100 first place cash prize for finishing top of the leaderboard. Also, you can play for a chance to win £75,000 on the Wednesday. Please do have a look at the T's and C's before getting involved. Thanks for watching and all the best, whatever you're backing on day 2 at Glorious Goodwood.